Good evening, everybody. Welcome inside the Bluebell studios of Bob Long Sports to the Villanova Basketball Report. Bob Long, Kevin Long, and Kevin Mcclaren here this evening. So excited to bring you another edition of Villanova Basketball Report. This should be a great show here tonight as we talk about a team that all of a sudden, guys, is back on track for a possible Big East regular season championship, something that a week ago looked far out of the question. Nova took care of business against Marquette, a game they were down 5 late, came all the way back, didn't allow a bucket by Marquette in the last 4 to 5 minutes of that game, ended up winning by 6. Then a big win against Butler in a game that they looked really good in for the vast majority of it. Marquette having trouble with the turnovers, lost the game they shouldn't have this weekend after losing to Villanova. All of a sudden, Villanova, Marquette, tied in the loss column. Villanova with just one more game to go in Big East play. Marquette with 2. And the season, which has been disjointed and choppy essentially from the beginning, now begins to look on the up and up.
Yeah, I mean, the performance of Jermaine Samuels in that Marquette game was just astounding, something that none of us ever expected. As you see on our whiteboard here, the amount of three-point attempts that Jermaine had in that game compared to the rest of his Big East play, those numbers were just astounding. So it just shows you how this team can get a contribution on any given night from any given person. But then again, at the same time, in that Butler game, Jermaine Samuels went back to more of the same, fairly irrelevant once again. So you just never know what you're going to get from this team. They're very streaky right now. I still fear the day that Phil Booth and Eric Paschall go cold, and that's sort of what we saw the last couple of weeks. Colin Gillespie has been somewhat irrelevant the past couple of weeks as well, not playing as well either. So, Phil Booth and Eric Paschall really need to continue to pick up this load for this team. And they had a very nice week in the past week, which showed for this Villanova team.
That's Kevin Long. Next up, Kevin Mcclaren. But we're going to get back to some of the things that you talked about because I think we disagree slightly on a few of those points. But Kevin Mcclaren, let's get you in here. What's your thoughts on what you saw in the past couple weeks?
Well, I think we clearly got the answer that Samuels doesn't have the red light, even though we don't really know what he has. You can't have a red light and shoot 13 threes in a game and 17 overall, something like that. But it was nice to see him. I mean, we had a question whether he can shoot or not, and he clearly still can. So he's just got to have the confidence, I guess.
Back to the studio here in Bluebell. Kevin's joining us, of course, from Baltimore, as he always does. So, Kevin, you mentioned that you thought Jermaine went back to being irrelevant against Butler, and maybe the 7-point line would tell you that. And also, that Phil Booth, Eric Paschall, their off nights are going to cost Villanova. In both of those points, I have a little bit of a bone to pick there because let's start with Jermaine Samuels. We're going to talk about this on the whiteboard as well. Jermaine Samuels, by virtue of what he did against Marquette, forced Butler to guard him in a different way. And because Butler guarded him in a different way, he was able to space the floor. Phil Booth was single coverage a little bit more than he normally has been, at least in recent weeks, when other teams didn't need to think about Jermaine Samuels as a shooting threat. And as a result, that opened up Phil Booth to really the tremendous scorer that he is and has been. And we can talk about has he been selfish over the course of the year. I think the answer to that is yes, but it's complicated as well because unless you're finding Saddiq Bey, who's more than happy to shoot, there are guys that just wouldn't shoot the basketball and would play catch, hot potato, right back to Phil Booth, and he's got to do something with it. So, my thought on the Butler game, did Jermaine Samuels go back to being irrelevant? I suppose to an extent if you look just at that box score, but I thought the threat to shoot was still there even though he only let 1 3 go. And that allowed Phil Booth to be a lot more effective. Eric Paschall, too, 5 for 11, a bit more efficient than he had been. There's obviously something where we're not going to pin everything about the success of Phil Booth and Eric Paschall onto the shoulders of what Jermaine Samuels does. However, against Marquette, Phil Booth, 3 for 18. Why? Because they committed doubles on him all night long. He's still going to get the volume of shots up no matter what, but they were leaving Jermaine Samuels wide open on high ball action. Samuels, fortunate to take advantage. Against Butler, they had to play more straight up and play it more honestly defensively.
Yeah, clearly in the first matchup, Marquette saw what Villanova was doing with Jermaine Samuels. They saw that they weren't using him to his full capability, and they really just didn't even play him. They stayed off. And to Jay Wright's credit, in the second matchup, he saw that. He noticed that that's the way they were playing. They were giving Jermaine his space because they knew that he was not looking to shoot really ever. We've talked about it several times on this show. So to Jay's credit and then to Jermaine's credit for playing so well, that really changed the way that entire game was played against Marquette last week. But then, yeah, like you said, when Butler came in on Sunday or on Saturday, all of a sudden they had the game plan for Jermaine Samuels, and that does open the floor up for the rest of the guys. So, that impact is certainly felt. And, Jermaine was looking to drive to the basket a little more than normal. I think he put up 1 3-point shot in that game. So, still not a huge improvement there. But like you said, Butler was playing him a little bit tougher. That opens up the lanes for some other guys, especially Phil Booth and Eric Paschal. So the effect of Jermaine's game against Marquette is certainly felt. I don't think he's going to go back to that guy that he was earlier in the season that was immediately looking to pass and, would not shoot or even dribble at that rate. I think we're going to continue to see this Jermaine Samuels, but you're going to see now teams are game planning for Jermaine Samuels. They know what he can do, and I don't think you're going to ever see a performance like that from Jermaine Samuels in the near future because teams are going to game plan for him like that.
Kevin Mcclaren, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think like Kevin said, especially if he keeps shooting that outside, they'll respect it more. And we've seen how explosive Samuels can be in the lane, especially early in the year. So I think he can be especially more effective if he starts getting pump fakes and the players to jump on them.
This is the Villanova Basketball Report live here on Bob Long Sports. Bob Long, Kevin Long, and Kevin McClernand. And guys, the other thing I wanted to talk about tonight is the defense of the Villanova Wildcats, because this team, over the course of the year, has really struggled defensively. They started to find themselves. Then they started to struggle again. And really, in the last few weeks, even including the losses, the defense, I think, has been average to above average. And the reason, and we're going to talk about this in a portion of the whiteboard as well, is their ability to help defend. They're not the best on-ball team in terms of guarding the basketball and guarding a driver to the basket. Colin Gillespie, he's a guy who can get beat off a dribble from a primary ball handler, but he's tremendous in terms of sliding underneath and either stopping an already driving offensive player as a secondary defender or stepping in and taking a charge. We've seen that from Joe Cremeux as well, probably the only serviceable part of his defensive game, and we saw it a lot against Marquette, being able to slide in against Marcus Howard, a guy who loves to get by his initial defender and then hang and hit these floaters. Well, listen, his body control wasn't particularly good on Wednesday night. Villanova noticed that in film session, and they were able to take advantage. Marcus Howard, 3 of offensive fouls of the 4 fouls that he picked up in that game. And then I just want to talk as well about how Villanova's gotten beat from the perimeter defense at times with their defense in terms of scrambling around, havoc-type half-court set where you're sending 2 guys to 1 player and then trying to recover to the outside. In recent weeks, it's been very good. It was great against Butler. They forced 17 turnovers against Marquette, and a lot of that is because their ability to bring a second defender on at times, play decent on-ball defense, but allow that help defense to really define that effort over a 30-second offensive play for the opponent.
Yeah, I agree. I think the defense has stepped it up quite a bit, and I want to go back to Jermaine Samuels on this as well. So this team has struggled to find a big man that, Demir Cosby-Roundtree, not necessarily the big man they're looking for, not a whole lot of offensive game. So Jermaine Samuels is kind of the de facto guy who's guarding the other centers in these games. Struggled with that early, found himself in a lot of foul trouble early, but seems to have really figured that out in the past couple of weeks. He's done a good job keeping himself in the game out of foul trouble. He's had done a good job of stopping the other big man. So I just want to give him a little credit there as well. well. Even before he found himself offensively against Marquette, he was contributing in some really big ways on the defensive end that has really helped propel this team. They've struggled all year. We're going to see it in the NCAA tournament. We all know it's coming. It feels like 2017 all over again. They're going to struggle if they have a big man that they can't defend, so they need a guy like Jermaine to really be the rock down there for them defensively.
And he's a tremendous rebounder as well. Again, an undersized type 4 or a stretch 3, a guy that can go in there, get in the midst, and we saw it when we had the discussion with Derek Gerberich at Stathouse Analytics earlier in the year. On a by-minute basis, he's one of the best rebounders on the team, if not the best, and the team as a unit rebounds better while he's on the floor. There's something to be said about that. Kevin, let's get you back in on this conversation.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up the foul trouble also. In the beginning of the year, especially the big guys, Pascal, it seemed like one of those three, Samuels, Pascal, or Roundtree, was going to get in foul trouble when they were asking Sadiq to cover fours, basically, which, I mean, especially as a freshman, true freshman, it's really difficult to do in the beginning of the year with a guy like his size. So I think them staying, those three big guys staying out of foul trouble, playing effective defense has been huge, especially in Big East play.
I think the other thing we've seen from Sadiq, too, is just a lot of the freshman pains, trying to figure out when to switch, where to switch. It's something that we've talked about at times painstakingly so, if I may reference the Penn game.
Yeah, and the Penn show.
The Penn show.
Possession by possession. Every possession in the second half. And the 9 times that he made mistakes.
We all remember. But, yeah, exactly. So he's gotten himself into a lot of foul trouble with that in the past. Still not great. You see it at times, not as often as we have in the past. So he's getting better at it. But, yeah, Sadiq and Jermaine stepping up defensively, guarding those bigs, has really been a huge help for this team.
So in order to avoid groupthink, might as well throw out there what we got for a comment on Facebook. Ryan Lennox, who does the studio hosting on 610 Sports for Villanova Basketball, saying that the defense is questionable at best. So he disagrees with what we're seeing recently. So again, I'm happy to take a step back, but what I've seen, even against Marquette, they were shooting over 50%, and that is, as Ryan would say, questionable. But the 17 turnovers that they elicited from Marquette really defined that basketball game. Listen, when Villanova shoots 35% and wins the game against the top 10 team in the country and doesn't score 70 points, I'm going to credit the defense there. And then from a Butler perspective, they shoot 38% and look thoroughly confused at times. But when Villanova gets beaten, this is my opinion on it, but when Villanova gets beat, they look bad doing it because they run that, again, havoc type, almost as if it's a VCU full court, but it's in the half court where they're running a second defender at guys. And then if another team is able to move the basketball around the outside perimeter quickly enough, they can create good shots for themselves. But Villanova is banking on, 1, getting a turnover first, 2, the other team not being able to move it crisply enough, and 3, if they are, being able to recover and then contest on the closeout. At times it looks bad. At times when they were really good and winning national championships, it looked bad. But I think they're doing well enough. And again, even in some of the games that they've lost in the second part of the second half, they've fallen off. But generally speaking, this is a team that has been good in the second half and has closed out games. I think of Georgetown a few weeks ago, prior to the one where Georgetown was able to close out Villanova. I think about Seton Hall, etc. I think of Creighton at Creighton. There were a lot of games this year where Villanova was 10 minutes left in the game, tied, down a few points, and was able to close out those games convincingly. Defense is a big reason why. So I'll say I respectfully disagree with Ryan, but interested to see what he comes back with on Facebook.
Yeah,
Kev?
and I think to your point about Villanova losing, and when they do so, they lose badly. It feels like they're desperate when they're losing, right? We've talked about it so much all over the show all year that this team really has 2 players that's stepping up at the moment. It's Phil Booth and it's Eric Paschal, and when one or both of those guys go cold, especially when it's Phil Booth, it feels desperate, and you feel like Phil is forcing the ball up. He's forcing early shots and contested shots threes way behind the three-point line, just not good shots. And other teams are coming away on breakaways, scoring quickly, and the game just kind of spirals out of control with that over and over again. It's sort of a snowball effect, and it feels more forced, and Phil goes down and chucks up another three. So I think that's why you see them losing badly sometimes when they do lose. And I think that's why they went on this run. We had this run where Phil was not particularly playing well. He, was throwing up a lot of bad shots and forcing the action a little bit too much. Didn't quite find his rhythm over the past couple of weeks, but now he's starting to settle in. Found a guy in Jermaine Samuels to pick up the slack and sort of take the pressure off of him, and then it just felt like that flowed right into the Butler game where everyone was a little bit more confident. So really, I think Jermaine Samuels' performance at Marquette there was able to slow the game down for everybody a little bit and make everybody feel a little bit more confident in what they're doing.
Let's also call it what it is, and this is a Villanova team that left, 4 guys left for the NBA, I should say. Yes, they have 2 seasoned veterans in Phil Booth, Eric Paschall, but beyond that, Jermaine Samuels, again, we're really hard on him on this show, but I think it's because he's so important to this team, and his delta is wider than the Pacific Ocean at times, it seems, whether he's taken 13 threes or he's taken 11 combined threes all Big East season coming into that game where he took 13. That's one of those things where being able to space the floor, having the veteran leadership, and having consistent play is such a struggle. Demir Cosby-Roundtree, he can be a great rebounder. He can also commit a really dumb foul 90 feet from the basket. Colin Gillespie, he can be a great shooter, or he can dribble too deep and then get himself into trouble, turn the basketball over. Joe Cremeux, yes, he's a senior, but his first year with the program, playing more like a sophomore, which you might expect from a sophomore. Hasn't been consistent from beyond the arc. Defense has been suspect. Saddiq Bey has played like, I would call him more like a junior than anything else at times in terms of his willingness to shoot the basketball, but he hasn't been proficient enough from beyond the arc. And this is a team that won a national championship and graduated 0 players. 0. I mean, they did graduate, but there was eligibility left for all 4 of those guys, and they decided to take their talents to the NBA, as every one of them had the right to do, and I think at the end of the day probably made the right decision to do. But this is a Villanova program that hasn't had a guy leave early since Kyle Lowry. Before that, Michael Bradley. I know that Wayans and Sheik left, but not for NBA opportunities. So these are NBA caliber players, 4 of them leaving at a given time, not something that this Nova program has experienced before. It's a really young program, and they're number 23 in the country. They've had a very down start to the year, had a great start, 9-0 in Big East play, hit a little bit of a rut. It happens. They're young kids. But now here they are, rounding into form at the end of the year. I don't know if that form is good enough for, say, an Elite 8 run, but I do believe that if they are able to earn a 6 seed or a 7 seed, they can certainly draw a favorable 3 in a potential second-round game, a favorable 2 in a potential third-round game. And you just never know. College basketball, who's really good this year? And so Villanova, it's going to be a timing thing. It's going to be a veteran leadership thing. Can they be ready to go for tournament time? But again, I think we need to take a step back as well as we have these discussions and realize that what we're talking about, Jermaine Samuels, Demir Cosby-Roundtree, Colin Gillespie all being keys, these are 3 sophomores that we're talking about, and it's still a very young team.
And nobody that was necessarily brought in to be a contributor this early. Like you said, to some extent, Jay expected to lose Mcclaren and Jalen Brunson after this year, but at no point I don't think Jay considered that he was going to lose Omari Spellman or Dante DiVincenzo. So those were 2 big surprises. Those were 2 huge voids to fill. If those guys were still here, then you're looking at a really strong starting 5. You got Omari Spellman and Dante DiVincenzo to go with Phil Booth and Eric Paschall, and then you have Colin Gillespie sprinkled in there, Jermaine Samuels sprinkled in there as a 6th, 7th man to contribute. You're talking about a top 10 team again. You're talking about another national title contender just with 2 of the 4 guys returning. So obviously this team is still trying to pick up the pieces from losing those 4 players to the NBA. And they're still doing all right doing so, right? Consistently in the top 25, been in and out this year, but for the most part has been in it. So it's impressive that this this program is at a state where it can, withstand losing 4 guys in 1 year to the NBA.
Struggling with the segues here tonight, but it's a great discussion here in the studio. Let's send it down to Baltimore. Kevin Mcclaren, your general reactions, thoughts on that discussion?
Well, just to go back to losing the 4 guys, I think it's funny. If Jalen Brunson never gets in foul trouble at the end during the national championship game, DiVincenzo is 100%, I think, still at Villanova, because I don't think he goes off for 31 points in that championship game. But also going back to the defense, to play devil's advocate against Bob's comment that the defense has been playing well enough. I mean, been playing well enough against the Big East competition. We're going to see how good the defense is when they start playing out of the conference again.
So continue that for me.
I mean, we know how weak the Big East has been this year, and who knows, they only might get 2 teams. So, I mean, we'll see if they can play as well as they have been against better teams, better competition.
Okay. Not a Big East guy down there in Baltimore. Listen, I get it. It hasn't been the strongest league this year.
And we've seen Marcus Howard go, 35 points in the first game against them?
Sure. You're right. You're absolutely right. And he's one of the top 3 or 4 players in the entire country. That's at least how I would look at it from a scoring perspective. But listen, not to go on a crusade for the Big East here. Yes, the conference is extremely balanced, and there's a lot of teams around 500, and that's going to hurt the league. But are you really telling me that if somebody draws St. John's as an 11 or 12 seed, that team's not going to be feeling a little bit uncomfortable there? That they wouldn't rather a mid-major or something to that extent? There are talent. Creighton, they just beat Marquette. Could they be developing a late-stage run towards a at-large bid? And would a 5 seed like to see Creighton? I don't know. I tend to think the league is a little bit stronger than the parity might indicate.
For me, not offensively wise. I think that the league overall is stronger defensively.
Okay, fair enough. Kevin Long?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is one of the stronger Big East year. Obviously,
No doubt.
Last year, with Xavier and Villanova right at the top 2 number 1 seeds, it was really a banner year in terms of the new Big East structure since everything, all the realignment a few years ago. But I would have to agree it's a little bit weaker. I wouldn't want to face Marquette and Marcus Howard at any point. I think that's a scary matchup to any team because Marcus Howard is a tough guard for anybody in the entire country. So, in terms of the top teams, sure, I would have to agree that this is not one of the better years. But I think top to bottom, you're looking at one of the better years for this league in terms of you don't have that DePaul that's generally at the bottom feeder and it's an easy win. I don't think there are any easy wins right now in the Big East. I think every team is competitive. You have teams like Providence and DePaul at the bottom, and they're playing pretty well. So in terms of tournament teams, yeah, I think to get 3 in would be good at this point. 4 would be a little surprising. That would mean a team like Creighton would make a run in the tournament, in the Big East tournament. So yeah, you're not going to see that many teams from the Big East in the NCAA tournament this year.
Interesting.
Or even win the tournament too.
Say that again, Kev?
Or even win the tournament. Obviously, if Nova or Marquette doesn't win the tournament, then they get the automatic bid.
Right. Well, sure. Absolutely. And in a 10-team league, it's very, very easy to envision a situation where Villanova and Marquette, especially given the recent inconsistency on both sides, don't win that tournament. Totally agree. 100%. So that, folks, was the opening tip here on the Villanova Basketball Report and kind of the body of the show as we talk about. But a lot more good stuff coming your way. In fact, if you're ready, Kevin Long, might be time for Cat in the Wild if you have one.
Let's do it. Yeah, absolutely. So my Cat in the Wild this week comes to us from the NBA again. One of the somewhat recent graduates of Villanova. This guy led the Villanova 2016 national championship team. For all intents and purposes, one of Jay Wright's favorite players to come through the program, a guy that really embodies the Villanova basketball program, and that's Ryan Archie-Diacono. he's had a tough time of it, undrafted coming out of college. He played all 4 years at Villanova. He was always a little bit undersized, not necessarily the quickest guy, didn't necessarily have the best shot in the world, but has really found his way in Chicago this past year. Obviously, they acquired Chris Dunn from the Timberwolves over the offseason. He's been the guy for them. He's been their point guard, but he's been in and out of the lineup with an injury. But Archie has really kind of taken over in his absence in the past couple of games. In the past week, in 3 games, he's scored an average of 11 points. He's averaging about 3 assists per game, grabbing a couple rebounds here and there. But good to see him consistently scoring double digits. Just a guy that you didn't really think was going to make it at the NBA level. And we're excited here to see him having some level of success at the NBA, showing that he can do it and, hopefully building upon that success.
We talk a lot about that senior class that brought them to the 2016 National Championship. Daniel Ochefu, Ryan Arcidiacono, of course. Ryan is your cat in the wild here today. I know you mentioned Daniel Ochefu on an earlier show. He continues to tear it up as well.
He does.
And it's pretty cool to see that class that really wasn't fitting to have any true NBA prospects getting into it. Now, Ochefu's still in the D League, but he's throwing up 30 points at a fairly semi-regular clip, it appears. At least from the highlight videos I'm seeing, it seems as if he's pretty much a beast at the D-League level.
Yeah, he's doing some real good things at the D-League level. That's just a tough position. The NBA is really looking for that stretch 5. They even want those guys to shoot the 3, like the Joel Embiid, the DeMarcus Cousins, those of the world. Daniel Ochefu is nowhere near to developing any kind of a game like that. So I hope that he's able to translate that into some NBA success. But like you said, he's having a lot of success in the Kings organization, in the G League right now. So hope to see those guys both continue to succeed.
And this is why it's great to have Kevin Mcclaren on as well whenever we talk about a guy in the NBA. He's also our resident NBA expert on the Pick and Roll podcast, which you can listen to on SoundCloud through BobLongSports.com. Kevin, your thoughts on these 2 cats from the class of 2016?
Yeah, like you said, Ochefu's playing great in the G League right now. That Kings organization has so much depth at that position that he probably won't be able to move up in that organization. But, any other team, especially coming down the stretch here where teams start sitting players because they're resting them, trying not to get injured / tanking. He could get signed, play some minutes in the NBA. And like you said, Arch is playing for Chicago. They're not trying to win games. And Dunn has been injured also. So, he's done a very good job for that team, playing really well.
It's good stuff. This is the Villanova Basketball Report. It's live here on BLS. Bob Long, Kevin Long here in the studio. Kevin Mcclaren is down in Baltimore. We're going to take a quick break and come back on the other side. We have a great whiteboard segment coming your way tonight here, folks. We're going to talk more about Jermaine Samuels and how, even when he's not shooting 3, when the threat is there, how that affects not him, but his other teammates. I know 2 weeks ago we addressed how Jermaine shooting the basketball changes things for the Cats and how he needs to be more aggressive. Now we're going to talk about how he is opening things up for other guys even when he's missing shots. And then, of course, we're going to talk about that half-court havoc type defense that Villanova is known for and how they've been successful in recent weeks and how, as they build towards a stretch run here, they need to refine things slightly as well. One of our favorite segments coming up next. Stay with us.
Ford is Mayfair's neighborhood Ford store.
Nobody knows your neighborhood like Dunphy Ford.
Nearly 40 years.
Right here on Frankfurt Avenue.
Generation after generation. Our neighbors continue to be our customers. We have access to the cars and trucks you want with financing you need.
Dunphy Ford is Northeast Philly's first choice for America's #1 brand. 7700 Frankfurt Avenue in Mayfair. Online at www.dumpyford.com.
Come experience the Dumpy difference. You'll be glad you did.
What does your character look like? Does it bounce back after each setback? Does it stand out by standing up? Does it make good on good intentions? Character is invisible until it's not. Only through action will the world know what it's made of, what you're made of. Find out how you can strengthen the character of your community alongside empowered veterans and families of the fallen at travismanion.org.
I would say that LaSalle is dynamic. Prepared. Active. Diverse. Brotherhood. Family.
Welcome back inside the Villanova Basketball Report studios. Bob Long. It's time for V's and O's, where we break down a concept in Villanova basketball. And tonight, it's the continuation of what we've talked about for a few weeks. That's Jermaine Samuels and his willingness, newfound willingness, to shoot the basketball. So to set it up, as we've had these discussions before, Jermaine Samuels will come up and lay a high ball screen for Phil Booth. Booth loves to go to his right, can also go to his left, certainly. But then he's going to be replaced by by Jermaine Samuels, I should say, up here. So Booth now is coming over here with the basketball in his hand. Defender follows him. What is Jermaine Samuels, the defender, going to do as he comes to this spot? If he follows Booth in order to hedge, Samuels can either roll to the hole or pop back out to shoot a three. Samuels has been really good in terms of launching the three there. And I'm going to snag another pin here as well, because at this point, Jermaine Samuels, as a guy who is either going to choose to pass this one off real quick or to shoot, changes the entire game for this Villanova offense. Up until the game against Marquette, he wasn't even looking at the basket. He wasn't even shooting the basketball. Oddly enough, he did take 4 threes at the BMO Harris Bradley Center, now Fiserv Forum at Marquette. He took 4 threes there, but only in the second half after Jay told him that he needed to shoot more. Okay, so now Marquette understands that Jermaine Samuels isn't going to beat him, and they're not going to let Phil Booth beat them. Interesting. Marquette knows how to stop a pure scorer. They have a guy on their own team, Marcus Howard, that fits into that same category. Shouldn't be a real surprise. So they're now committing 2 defenders to Phil Booth at all times, and Booth, in that game, goes 3 for 18. 10 for 10 at the line, but 3 for 18 from the field, in no small part because Marquette is able to develop and devote 2 guys to Phil Booth. Now, the other thing that Villanova started to do really well in that game was drive. And these driving lanes opened up opportunities for spot-up threes for Saddiq Bey and for Jermaine Samuels. So Saddiq Bey loves to shoot this 3 on the baseline. Hit a huge 3 to go up 1 point late in that game. Jermaine Samuels, 5 for 13 from beyond the arc. 29 points, however, as he wasn't afraid to get to the basket either. So that's really, really important for Villanova. Jermaine Samuels being able to shoot the basketball. What happens against Butler? Samuels only takes 1 3 over the course of the game. In that game, it was really something else. He only shot 1 3, but the floor was still open for Phil Booth. And the reason why? Because Butler, they had to respect Jermaine Samuels from what he did just a few weeks ago, or days before, against Marquette. So now Phil Booth coming down the floor. Villanova's recently been an attack-minded mentality, trying to get to the basket. He was able to do that. He was also able to just rise up and shoot the 3. and could get to his favorite spot, which is about the elbow, where he can rise up and hit a three. And when there isn't a second defender collapsing on him, he's so much more effective, to the tune of 28 points, 10 for 15 from the field, and 4 of 7 from beyond the arc. That's when Phil Booth is at his best. So why wasn't he at his best in the past? Well, that's a variety of reasons and a variety of questions that you could certainly ask. But a part of it was Jermaine Samuels and the fact that he was an empty body on the floor without a threat to score. And Villanova over the years has been one of those teams that lives and dies out here on the perimeter and spreading the floor, allowing for driving lanes and allowing for kicks to open threes is how they went about it. Without Samuels, with that opportunity or even that availability, changed things significantly. So I think this is going to be important for Phil Booth, for Eric Paschal, who needs that driving lane as well to be able to get to the basket. That's going to be huge. Will Jermaine Samuels be ready to shoot? And if I can add one more, will Saddiq Bey, will he be ready to shoot? Oh, sure he will. Will he make the shots? He, Joe Cremeux, huge in terms of if they can make threes. Jermaine Samuels, will he take them? The biggest 2 or 3 questions that Villanova can answer as they head towards the stretch run. All right, one more thing to go over for you guys. We talked about it at the top. Villanova's defense, has it been good? Has it been bad? Varying opinions on it. I think it's been good and good enough. Against Marquette, Marquette was shooting over 50% going into the final 5 minutes of that basketball game that Villanova won. Okay, that's not a great number. 17 turnovers in that game. Villanova was able to do that by committing multiple defenders to guys, playing that 3/4 court 1-2-2 zone pressure. And then when they do dive back, so let's go through that real quick. The 1-2-2 is not necessarily trying to cause turnovers. It's trying to slow down an offense so that by the time they get across the timeline, you've taken 10 or so seconds off the clock. However, if the ball does happen to get over this way, you can commit a second defender and try to create a third defender with the midcourt stripe and the out-of-bounds line. That can be done. But Villanova will occasionally run this. They like to run it out of timeouts and switch up the defenses over the course of the game. It's a brilliant move by Jay Wright. But now we're going to go X is the offense and V for V's and O's are the Villanova defense. V, 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 and V. So as this ball moves around the outside, Villanova, and let's just say that they're going to have one guy in the paint, and Villanova has a guy here. So as this guy beats the Villanova defender off the dribble, because Villanova has not been a terrific on-ball defending team, this defender can make the run here, this defender can make the run here, and again, that's going to open up a guy here. If it happens to be this Villanova defender, perhaps it's Saddiq Bey. But Villanova has made a patent on this defender recovering and closing out. And then as the ball is moved here, now it's this defender moving here to close out, et cetera, et cetera. You're counting on the other team. You're making them make a perfect set of passes, kind of like when you're testing an outfielder in baseball. Make him make a perfect throw, and if he does it, he's going to get you out at the plate, and that's fine. But you're being aggressive, and you're trying to make something happen. That's what Villanova is doing. Listen, there are innate challenges to guys like Colin Gillespie, Joe Cremeux, who can get beat off the dribble. You'll even see it with Phil Booth from time to time. None of these guys are absolutely stellar defenders. Jermaine Samuels is probably the team's best defender. But when they do get beat off the dribble, there needs to be a way for Villanova to react. So maybe it's this particular defender collapsing, and then the ball makes its way out here. Perhaps they try to move the ball inside to this guy, whatever we said his name was, X, right here, and Villanova's going to double this guy. Well, okay, when the ball does come out here, there does need to be a defender to at least make the effort to close out. And Villanova's, we'll call it havoc half-court defense, is based on doubling and then recovering. And it's an effort-based defense that a lot of teams aren't in shape enough to play, aren't committed to from a system perspective. But Jay, for better or for worse, over the years has committed to this havoc recover type system. And I believe that right now, Villanova, with the innate challenges that they have in terms of getting beat off the dribble, are playing pretty well defensively, enough to keep them in games when their offense hasn't been terrific, enough to keep teams under 70, 60, occasionally 50 points. And that's big for Villanova. Can they keep that up against a more national schedule? It's something that Kevin Mcclaren brought up earlier in the show. I don't know, but I do think that this can translate and can give teams trouble. So that's a look at Villanova's half-court man-to-man defense. That's our V's and O's segment for the night, and we'll send it back to the studio.
Ford is Mayfair's neighborhood Ford store.
Nobody knows your neighborhood like Dunphy Ford.
Nearly 40 years.
Right here on Frankfurt Avenue.
Generation after generation, our neighbors continue to be our customers. We have access to the cars and trucks you want with financing you need.
Dunphy Ford is Northeast Philly's first choice for America's #1 brand. 7700 Frankfurt Avenue in Mayfair. Online at www.dumpyford.com.
Come experience the Dunphy difference. You'll be glad you did.
What does your character look like? Does it bounce back after each setback? Does it stand out by standing up? Does it make good on good intentions? Character is invisible until it's not. Only through action will the world know what it's made of, what you're made of. Find out how you can strengthen the character of your community alongside empowered veterans and families of the fallen at travismanion.org.
I would say that LaSalle is dynamic.
Prepared. Active. Diverse. Brotherhood. Family.
Welcome back inside our Bluebell Studios. This is the Villanova Basketball Report, live on Bob Long Sports. Bob Long, Kevin Long, and we have Kevin Mcclaren down in Baltimore. So let's start with Kevin Mcclaren on this one, because I know for one, we have one of your big segments coming up, and two, wanted to get your thoughts on the V's and O's segment that we just did.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of pointed out some of the things I'm worried about when they do face those out-of-conference guys, especially with the pick and rolls that we've seen Cosby-Roundtree get in so much trouble with early in the year. But, I mean, Samuels has improved throughout the year, and if he's able to continue to play as well as he has on the defensive end, I think he'll be very effective in the defensive end. So
should we do our most fun segment from Kevin Mcclaren's desk in Baltimore?
Which one? There's so many fun ones. Which one do you want to do?
You want to do the trivia?
All right, let's do the trivia. We'll start with, what school started the tradition of cutting down nets?
Wow. I have absolutely no idea.
I have no idea as well.
1947 it was started.
1947. Well, This is a shot in the dark, just because they are playing Seton Hall. I'm going to say Seton Hall, maybe trying to tie it back together here.
Bob, you got a guess?
Oh, no, I'm not. Actually, you know what? I will. No, I'm not.
Okay. No, I wasn't trying to connect anything together. It was NC State in 1947. They won their conference championship, and they cut down the nets.
Interesting.
What player for a Big East team? So it's not Big East games. It's games total in their college career that played for a Big East team. Who has played the most career games?
Ooh,
I'll tell you that Hart and Jenkins finished at 146, and this was one behind the record.
And I'm sorry, did you say it was all games combined?
Correct.
All games combined. So, okay, this is throughout their entire career, games played.
Yeah, so Hart and Jenkins played 146 games in their career, and the career leader has 147.
Okay.
I'll throw out a guess. I'll go with DeJuan Blair from Pitt.
Okay. I do like that guess. I'm going to stick with a Pitt guy because they went to the Big East championship game all those years, but they really didn't go very far in the tournament. Boy, this is difficult. I do like that era, though. Why don't I just do it? Brendan Knight.
Yeah, I mean, it is a recent guy, but not on Pitt. On Syracuse, Brandon Trish played 147 career games.
That's a good name right there. That's good.
And Phil Booth is at 142 right now. So 143 completing the regular season. Then he has the conference tournament and then regular tournament to get 4 more games to tie him.
You know, it's a great point, Kevin, because he played 3 games in the year that he redshirted.
Correct.
And so that could be the difference.
Combined with 2 conference championships, 2 national championships. Yep. It's a recipe for success there. It should be interesting.
Especially in that particular trivia question.
Yeah.
And then last trivia question, who is the single season leader in points per game for the Big East?
Okay. Single season leader.
I assume
you have a guess first?
No, I don't. I'm thinking. Good live TV.
Great live TV.
Yeah, it is pretty recent. So.
Yeah.
I looked back because I was shocked that Patrick Ewing he never averaged 20 points per game, which shocked me. But
wow.
How recent are we talking here?
Yeah, well. I'm just trying to think of some of the great scorers. If McBuckets played here for 4 years.
It's just one season.
It's one season.
Oh, McBuckets.
Yeah, it's McDermott.
Okay.
And I think he only played his senior year in the Big East, correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
How about that?
So, yeah, Creighton 2013, 2014.
It's a good question.
Doug McDermott. And that's all the trivia I got.
But there's more.
There is more. There's the games this week. We have tomorrow night, Texas at Texas Tech. Texas Tech's favored by 7.5. These first 2 games are their lines, not my lines.
Gotcha. I'm going to take Texas because I've been giving the points and been getting burned all season long. So I'm going to take the points. Texas. Hook 'em. Okay, cool. Hook 'em.
Yes, a little Tom Herman. Love it. I'll go with Texas Tech. I think they've been playing well over the past couple of weeks. They're a really strong team. Really strong bet in the Big 12. Maybe to unseat Kansas this year, but we'll see. Texas Tech.
Let's hope. I'm going
strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it works out for him.
I'm going with Texas Tech also to cover the 7.5. And side note, Zaire Smith.
Cotton. Let's see if it works out for him.
Zaire Smith is playing for the Delaware Bluecoats, so finally he's playing in sort of the NBA.
Got it. And that's your reasoning for picking Texas Tech. Good stuff.
Oh, of course, yeah. Jared Culver, I'm really surprised how big of a jump he's made this year, though.
Yep, solid player for sure. Very, very good.
Another Tuesday night game, Virginia Tech at Florida State. Florida State is favored by 4.
Virginia Tech outright.
Is that it?
Love Buzz Williams. Don't love Lou. Hey, what's his name? Leonard Hamilton's squad. Don't love Leonard Hamilton's squad. Love Buzz Williams' squad. Give me the Hoaks outright.
Yeah, not big on Florida State this year. Been an up and down team. We saw them earlier in the season, Villanova. That is, I wasn't all that impressed with them. I like Virginia Tech in this one at least to cover.
Yeah, I'm taking Virginia Tech also. Side note, I think this is like the third time I put Florida State. I think both of you have picked against them all 3 times. So you guys are really not big fans of Florida State.
Not big fan.
Not a big fan.
Fans.
Then these are my lines. We got Duke at UNC. This is Saturday, so still unsure whether Zion is going to play or not. Duke was 9.5-point favorites earlier, so I'm going to put them as 2.5-point favorites at UNC on Saturday.
I'm going to take Duke in that case.
I'm going to stick with UNC. UNC. Duke hasn't been the same team without Zion. A couple guys stepping up, Barrett, playing well for him. But, with Zion either not playing or not 100% at UNC, I'm going to take UNC in that one.
Yeah, I'm going to take UNC also. I mean, even if he comes back, like you said, Kevin, I'm not sure if he's going to be 100%. I mean, his explosiveness is all of his game, or not all of his game, but a big part of his game. So not sure how effective he can be if it's his first game back, and really not 100%.
This one feels to me like a game, not that I'm trying to convince you guys, but this one feels like a game where everybody is going to be picking UNC. They smoked them last time, exactly what you said about Zion, and a lot of times those are the games where something else can happen. And what I say about Florida State, I sometimes feel similarly about a Roy Williams coached team, that sometimes they just don't show in some big games. And I do think that they could turn the ball over against this Duke team and get themselves into trouble, whether Zion's 100% healthy or not.
That's fair enough. Trey Jones is still coming back. He's finally getting back to 100%. I think he's still been a step off, so maybe he can get back to 100% also. And then the final game is we got Houston at Cincinnati. Cincinnati favored by 1.5.
Houston at Cincy, Kev?
Yeah.
I'm taking Houston in that one. I just think this team, this is a very, very good team. They obviously had a good year last year. Should have probably gone further in that tournament if it wasn't for a late Jordan Poole 3 from Michigan propelling them to victory. I have a lot of confidence in this team heading into March, and I feel good about them going in and winning this one on the road.
Yeah, I think I like them too. But I'm going to go with my heart over my head, and I'm going to pick the Mick Cronin-coached Cincinnati Bearcats at the legendary Fifth Third Arena to win that basketball game. I think they find a way, and I think they cover the spread, win the game.
I think this is 4-4-4 with the Kevin staying together. I'm going with Houston. I think they're good enough, and they're going to win. They beat Cincinnati at home early in the year by 6, I believe, so I think they're going to win again at Cincinnati.
There you go. And that's the pick'em for tonight? That
is, but I do have the tiebreaker information if we want to talk about that for Villanova and Marquette.
Let's do it.
So Villanova is up by a half game right now. Marquette has 2 games. So if they do tie, deciding the first seed in the Big East tournament goes to head-to-head record, which we know they tied this year. And then, interestingly enough, it goes to record against the third-place team.
Yep.
Which, as we know, in the Big East is who knows. It could be a lot of teams. So if it's multiple teams, it goes to the overall record against all those teams together. So really, Villanova wants St. John's to be tied for third since the Marquette lost to them twice.
Wow. But also, Marquette lost to Creighton. So if Creighton is in there as well. And who are the other teams that are up there right now?
They're all there, to be honest. I think every team in the Big East can finish like 4 through 9 possible. Every team has those possible spots.
But DePaul or Providence probably.
I think they all have 6 wins right now, so really? They could. because the third place teams are 8-8 right now.
So you're saying DePaul wouldn't be a bad loss for Penn State, perhaps?
I mean, it's still well. I guess Penn State's a bad team, so I mean, it doesn't matter if bad losses or good losses for Penn State.
Yeah, I just was gently ribbing you there as Penn State got screwed by another call this weekend at the end of the basketball game. What else is new, Kev?
Yeah, they missed layups at the end of the game. Oh wait, that's not new. Sorry. But yeah, so it's going to be. But if you look at the Big East standings, they're all right there. It's really interesting. They're all combined, and like you said, they have the advantage for if St. John's and Creighton are there, since Marquette has the 4 losses, 1 against Nova, 2 against St. John's, and then the 1 against Creighton.
Well, the very interesting thing as well is that one of those losses that you mentioned is not Georgetown if you're Marquette. And so in order for the tiebreaker to even come to fruition, Marquette would have to be assumed to beat Georgetown on Saturday. Georgetown currently is 8-8. Now, by virtue of that loss, Georgetown would be at least 8-9 plus whatever they do in their other game this week. So Xavier is 8-8, St. John's is 8-9, Seton Hall is 7-9. But again, if Seton Hall, I guess in theory, beats both Villanova and Marquette, they could get to 9-9. Otherwise, for this tiebreaker to come to fruition, Seton Hall would have to go 7-11, losing to Marquette on Wednesday and losing to Villanova on Saturday. So it does come down to the would-be 8-9 plus 1 game Georgetown Hoyas, the 8-8 Xavier Musketeers, who play neither Villanova nor Marquette. And Villanova would what? What would be the situation there if it were Xavier, Kevin?
Just Xavier?
Just Xavier. Villanova lost to them once. Did Marquette lose to them?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
But if
Marquette.
But if it does also come down to a tie for the third place, if the teams have the same record against that, it goes to total road wins, which Marquette will win.
Okay. Very interesting. Very interesting stuff. Kevin Long, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. It seems like you really just want to keep Xavier out of that top spot. Try to get St. John's hopefully into that third spot. Get the 3 seed or get the 1 seed for Villanova, the 3 seed for St. John's. But at the end of the day, the way we're talking about this, there's so much parity between 3 and 6. It doesn't even really matter where you're seated at the end of the day in this Big East tournament. You know, if all goes according to plan, these teams will likely be co-Big East regular season champions. You know, it'll be a tiebreaker to figure out who plays whom at the end of the day. But if they're all already this close, what's the difference? You know, you could end up being 1 and playing, you know, the team that's 4 that would have been 3 if you were 2. So at the end of the day, it doesn't make a whole lot of a difference in the conference tournament, but makes for some good talk here. I'm enjoying it.
I'll tell you what. Look at this, guys. Look at the away records. I'm going to just read these off. The away records of these Big East teams. So Villanova's 13-2 at home. Marquette's 16-2 at home. Going right down, Villanova 5-6 away from home. Marquette's actually 6-3. Give them credit. Georgetown 4-5. Xavier 4-6. St. John's 4-6. Seton Hall 3-8. Creighton 4-7. Providence 5-5. Butler 3-7. I'm sorry, 2-8, and DePaul 3-7. I mean, every one of these teams is above 500, and every one of these teams has at least 6 wins in the Big East, all the way down to the last team in the league. And Marquette's the only team with a better than 500 record on the road. That's almost not believable.
Yeah, that's surprising.
Does that, I mean, I know I just pulled it up. Does that wrap up kind of the nature and the story behind this season as well as any stat you'll hear? My goodness.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes back to what we were saying. There's so much parity right now in the Big East. All these teams are very, very equal. You have two teams that are clearly pulling ahead of the rest, but the rest of them are a mixed bag, really. You know, you're going to get a different team in any given game. You know, some days St. John's is the best team in the conference, and sometimes they're playing like the worst team. So you just never know what you're going to get from one of these Big East teams, but a lot of parity so far this year.
All right, Kevin McClaren, wrap us up here. You got anything else before we get out of Dodge?
Well, I mean, we were talking about after St. John's won those couple big games that we hoped not hoped, but I mean, they looked like a potential third team that would get in, and 2 straight losses now, and they're shooting themselves in the foot. So this could be a 2-team bid. I mean, only 2 teams might get into the tournament. So, I mean, rough down year, but like we're saying, there's so many good teams that who knows, and who's going to win this tournament? It could be anybody's game.
Yeah, and going forward, this league, young talent, Mcclaren, Georgetown, St. John's, very, very strong team, backfilling with great talent. Villanova, extremely young, bringing in Dixon, Robinson, Earl, Antoine next year to go along with the freshmen that are being asked to contribute now and some of them that really aren't contributing that might be in the roster and on the floor a lot more next year. And this is I don't think it's a league that is down and out. You know, certainly there are financial implications that people talk about. I don't think it's going anywhere. And I think the league, you know, yes, is a little bit down. Listen, if DePaul and Butler were just 2-13 teams right now in the league, you might have 4 or 5 teams get to the tournament. It's just what happens sometimes. But Kevin, any final thoughts? Kevin Long?
I mean, I think we hit it a lot over the course of the show. It's going to make for some very interesting basketball here at the end of the day for the Big East. You know, this Villanova team is playing much better, but you know, in some respects, you want to see a third team in the Big East make the tournament. So, you know, it may be nice to see someone else get that automatic qualifier. Obviously, I'm looking for Villanova to take this tournament, but you know, it'd still be good to see a team and a program like St. John's hopefully take that next step, make the tournament. Like you said, Villanova has a lot of young talent. This team is poised for the future. They were not prepared for this year to lose all those guys to the NBA. So still promising future for this team and the rest of the conference.
Good to be back, guys. Enjoyed the show, enjoyed the discussion. Hopefully all our listeners and viewers did as well. He's Kevin Long. Kevin Mcclaren's down there in Baltimore, and I'm Bob Long here saying so long from our Bluebell Studios, the Villanova Basketball Report here on BLS. We'll see everybody next week, and enjoy the basketball. Until then, keep your eyes peeled on Marquette, a Wednesday night tilt against Seton Hall, and then, of course, Villanova's game against those same Pirates on Saturday. Enjoy, and have a great evening.